what do you think about this particular niche? Again, we're very appreciative you elected to be here, but what is it about us physicians that potentially makes us a little bit different and I believe statistically higher risk to get in trouble with our relationships?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, right? Like, that's the key question for you and for the people who are, your audience. And I think there's a lot there to unpack. So the first thing is I think physicians in general and surgeons specifically have a skill set automatically that you would think will make them better at marriage or monogamy or long-term relationships. And that is, in order to be a physician in general, and certainly in order to be a surgeon, you have to be good at delayed gratification. Like, I have a couple of friends who are surgeons, one of whom is a vascular surgeon who I trained Brazilian jiu-jitsu with, which, by the way, I'm always astounded that a successful vascular surgeon is training Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I said to him, I'm like, your hands are constantly getting mauled in jiu-jitsu. How are you doing this? Like, if I get fingers broken, no one's going to care if their divorce lawyer has broken fingers. But a vascular surgeon, you might need these things. But nevertheless, he still loves it. Josh Bearheim, amazing guy, Valley Hospital, Ridgewood, New Jersey. But, look, I think physicians and surgeons in general are used to trading what they want now for what they want most. I mean, no one would spend their entire 20s and even into their 30s doing the rigorous work necessary to become a physician or a surgeon who wasn't able to, say, hey, my eyes are on the prize. I know what I want, and I want to trade what I want right now, the gratification I want immediately, for what I want most. And that should translate actually into marriage being successful, because marriage is very often about keeping your eye on the ball, remembering the plot of the story you're trying to write with your partner, not being distracted by the shiny object, the compelling other person, and saying, no, I want what I have. I want to stay with what I have. I'm going to be disciplined in my approach to things. And in fact, surgeons have a lower overall divorce rate average, 33%, among physicians. So as physicians go, physicians have a higher divorce rate, as do lawyers, than the general public. But among physicians, the highest rate of divorce is psychiatrists, and among the lower is surgeons at 33%. But one of the things so that's what we have going for us in theory, right? You have going for you in theory that you can delay gratification, you keep your eyes on the prize. But I would also, by the way, very often people are marrying later when they're physicians or surgeons because they want to wait until they're finished with their education or finished with their residency before they marry. Although that's not always the case. And the older people are when they marry, statistically, the less likely they are to divorce, although it's not a giant statistical difference. So what works against them, of course, is these are high-stress professions, high-demand professions. These are professions where you're not able to just say, okay, I'm unplugging now. It's like I'm unplugging mostly now, except for an emergency, right? And you have a duty to someone other than your family. You have a duty to the people who have entrusted their care to you. I mean, legally even, you have a duty of care, which is something the general public does not have. When you're a physician, a surgeon, you have a duty of care. So, that I think certainly puts a tremendous weight on people. In my experience, and I've represented a lot of physicians and a lot of surgeons, because I work in Manhattan, so there's a tremendous, huge medical community and some amazing institutions in Manhattan and that surrounding area. So I've represented some really elite surgeons, world-class surgeons, people travel from all over the world to be with. Memorial Sloan Kettering, for example, is a hospital where I've represented a number of the physicians and surgeons there. And these are people who, people will, they have people from all over the world following them around as residents. They have people traveling from the UAE to receive care from them. And I think that's a situation where, there are tremendous demands placed on a person intellectually, emotionally, and time-wise that is potentially antagonistic to a marriage. And surgeons and physicians, in my experience, fall into one of two tranches. They either marry someone they went to school with, right? Like a lot of physicians marry people they met in medical school, and they marry fellow physicians, or they marry someone who they met during residency or in their early work life, and so they marry another physician. Or they fall into the category of they marry someone who is completely detached from that world, and it's sort of that barefoot in the park thing. You've got the surgeon married to the yoga teacher, and sometimes that really works because there's a polarity, a wonderful polarity there. You have someone with a high stress job who's married to someone with a lower stress job, and the physician or surgeon, who is an organized, methodical, thoughtful, planning oriented person is a good offset for the person who's sort of hippy dippy and perhaps more chill. And then they kind of lighten up the physician or surgeon. So that sometimes is a wonderful balance. But again, sometimes the things that attract us to people are the things that eventually cause us to be repelled from that person, because it's charming when you're first dating someone or first married to someone that it's like, oh, this person's so lighthearted and they kind of pull me out of my own zone. And then after you're married to them for 3 or 4 years, you're like, oh my God, get your act together. Like we have to have an organized life here. Like, and it's no longer cute, And by the way, in defense of the spouses or former spouses, they think it's incredible. Oh, I'm married to this person who has this very high stress, high powered job, and people are, like deferring to them, and they're getting emergency calls, and they're like a superhero to people, and that's really amazing and charming and very cool to tell their friends. But after you've been married to somebody for 5-6 years, like, and your phone's ringing at 2 a.m. and they're like, yeah, I got to get back to the hospital. That gets old fast,
Yes,
and then I think it's very hard when you are that person, right? When you're the physician or the surgeon or the trial lawyer, and this is a commonality we have in our respective professions, where when the person says, oh, really, like, again, you got to cancel plans because you got this emergency at work to deal with, of course they have a point, right? They have a point. Like, they want your time. They love you. They want to be with you, like, that's a beautiful, lovely, wonderful thing. But as a human being, I can tell you when that's happened to me. My response to that is, okay, I'm as advertised. Like, you knew I do this for a living. Like, you used to think it was charming that I was Superman to so many people. And now you're upset about it. And by the way, I don't notice you not using the credit card. Like, this is something I'm doing not for fun, but for pay. So, there is this feeling of everybody's right. You know what I mean? But you can be right or you can be happy, So I think a lot of what I try to do in my work is create a kind of radical empathy to the extent that I can, right, for people. Because I think we all have a point, and we all have a right to feel the way we feel. And by the way, even if we don't have a right to feel the way we feel the way we feel, right? Like, you can apologize for your feelings, but you feel the way you feel. So we have to deal with the reality of our feelings, like what someone else feels and what we feel, whether it's fair or not, it's how we feel. So I think for physicians and surgeons who, again, by definition, they're a lot like the quant people that I represent in finance in the city. Like, they're mathematically minded, they're scientifically minded. I mean, surgeons in particular are a weird, I love you guys, but you're weird. Like, because you're a blend of an artist and a craftsperson. Like the hands of an artist or a sculptor or a painter, really, in terms of dexterity and precision, and having to do and practice things tens of thousands of times, combined with a mathematical and science mind, which is not something you see all the time in one person. So in all genius, there's madness, and I think that when it works, it works wonderfully. Like, when someone loves that madness of you and loves that advertised, who you are, the sort of genius / madness of it. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also somewhat understandable when people grow weary of it. I was talking to my son recently, who's a newly admitted attorney. He's been an attorney for about 2 years. And I said something about, how I was just exhausted after a number of trials I'd had. And I said, yeah, I'm just, I'm not having fun right now. And he said, but Dad, you love your job. I said, well, I can love something and not be having fun at it. Yeah. Like, I love my job, but it's not always fun. Like, it's something like, I love sex, but if I did it for 14 hours a day, 9 days in a row, I'd need a nap, or I'd be a little tired of it. Yeah. So, we have a love for the work we do, hopefully. We have a passion for the work we do. We have a dedication to it. And certainly we've all sacrificed years and years of our most potent, vibrant years, our 20s, our 30s, building careers, building an educational skill set. So we love and are devoted to this thing, but it's often antagonistic to the other beautiful things in life.